I pulled into my driveway a full day earlier than planned, expecting nothing more than a quiet night, maybe a hot shower and sleep. But the moment I stepped out of the truck, something felt wrong. The porch light was on a light I never left on, and the lock on my front door wasn't mine. The key I'd used for the last 15 years didn't fit. I stood there, turning it again and again, that cold metallic click refusing to open the door of the house I'd worked my whole life to build. Before I could knock, the door swung open, and there he was, my daughter's fiancé, Jason, 29 years old, hair gelled back, wearing a smug grin on his face, like he'd been waiting for this moment. He leaned against the doorway with the confidence of a man who'd done something irreversible, arms crossed, voice dripping arrogance as he said, "You're early." My jaw tightened, but I kept my tone even. "Why is my door locked with someone else's key?" He smirked, a smirk I'd come to recognize, the smirk of a man who thought he'd won. "Because," he said, stepping forward like he was trying to block me from entering my own home, "this is our house now." For a second, the wind stopped. The world paused. Those 4 words carried something deeper: ownership, challenge, disrespect. A direct claim to everything I built with my bare hands. A claim he had no right to make. But instead of reacting the way he expected, anger, shouting, shock, I just looked at him and smiled. A slow, calm, quiet smile that made the color drain from his face. Because he didn't know something. He didn't know what I already knew. He didn't know the mistake he'd made long before I arrived. "Move," I said softly. Not loud, not aggressive. Just firm enough to remind him whose name was still on the deed. He hesitated, just long enough for his confidence to flicker, before finally stepping aside. As I walked past him, the air in the doorway thick with tension, he muttered, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't answer. I stepped into my house anyway, breathing in the familiar scent of cedar and old memories, knowing damn well this was only the beginning. And before we go any further, if you're still here listening to this, make sure to like this video, leave a comment saying, "I'm still listening," and subscribe, because what happened after I walked through that door was the moment Jason realized claiming my house was the final mistake he ever made. A lot of people think a house is just wood, nails, and concrete, but for me, this place was the last piece of a life I'd built bit by bit, long before Jason ever came into the picture. I've never been a flashy man. I worked construction for 37 years, the kind of work that leaves your hands rough and your back stiff by age 50. I liked quiet mornings, black coffee, and routine. After my wife passed away 7 years ago, it was just me and my daughter, Lily. She was everything I had left. I watched her grow from a shy little girl clinging to my leg into a strong, bright young woman who became my anchor when grief tried to pull me under. We weren't perfect, but we were close, closer than most fathers and daughters. So when she introduced me to Jason 2 years ago, I wanted to like him. Charming smile, polite handshake, the kind of guy who knew exactly when to laugh and exactly what to say to win over a room. And at first, it worked. Even I couldn't deny he had this smooth way of talking that made you feel like you'd known him for years. But underneath that charm, something about him always felt off. A little too polished, a little too eager to impress, a little too proud of things that didn't really matter. The kind of man who bragged about business deals he never finished and opportunities he almost had. But Lily didn't see any of that. She saw romance, attention, excitement, things she'd been starved of since her mother died. And because she was happy for the first time in years, I stayed quiet. I swallowed my instincts, even when he started showing up a little too often, staying a little too late, acting a little too comfortable in a house that wasn't his. It started small, moving a lamp, because the lighting was better this way, shifting my favorite chair, because the angle looked weird, suggesting Lily repaint the living room to make it more modern. Then his clothes started, peering on the guest room bed, then in the bathroom, then, accidentally, in the laundry. He'd show up on Friday and somehow still be there on Tuesday. At first, Lily laughed it off, saying he practically lived here anyway. But I knew the difference between being a guest and settling in. He began planning meals without asking me, making decisions for Lily, telling her which friends were bad influences, quietly steering her life like she didn't notice the wheel turning in his hands. And the money problems? Oh, he hid them well. Little hints slipped out between jokes about a rough month, excuses about a client backing out, stories about being just one big break away. But every time Lily covered a bill for him, every time he forgot his wallet, every time I found out he'd borrowed money he never mentioned, I felt the warning signs stacking up like bricks on my chest. Still, I stayed quiet. Still, I told myself he'd grow out of it. Still, I trusted my daughter to see what I saw. But love is blind, and manipulation is patient. And while I ignored my instincts, Jason kept crossing lines small at first, but always stepping a little further, a little deeper, until the house I'd built with my own hands started to feel less like a home, and more like territory he was slowly claiming, inch by inch, without ever saying a single word. I should have stopped him then. I should have drawn the line earlier. But I didn't know, back then, how far he'd go, or how much damage one man could do when he thought he finally found a way to own something he never earned. Things began shifting so slowly that if you weren't paying attention, you might have missed it, but I was paying attention. I noticed the first time he corrected Lily when she called the guest room Dad's spare room. He laughed and said, "You mean our media room," like it was already decided, like my home was just waiting for his approval. Then came the nights he invited his friends over without asking, a group of loud, overly confident guys who treated my living room like a sports bar. I'd come home to find my couch moved, my TV settings changed, my tools missing from the garage because Jason wanted to fix something real quick and didn't have his own set yet. The man didn't build a single thing in his life, but he walked around my place like he owned every nail in the walls. I'd hear him giving his friends a tour, pointing at my office and saying, "We'll turn this into a studio soon," or tapping the kitchen counter and saying, "We're thinking of upgrading these," as if my opinion didn't matter, as if I wasn't standing right there. And every time I tried to talk to Lily about it, she looked at me like I was the problem. "Dad, don't be dramatic," she'd say. "He's helping us improve things." Helping? He didn't lift a finger unless it benefited him. He reorganized my workshop without permission, claiming it was chaotic. He rearranged the living room because he said the energy flowed better. He even put up some cheap LED strips in the hallway, bragging about modernizing the place like he'd just renovated Buckingham Palace. The worst part wasn't the changes, it was the way Lily defended him every single time. I'd say, "He shouldn't move my things." She'd reply, "Dad, he's trying to make us feel comfortable." I'd say, "He shouldn't be here this much." She'd say, "Dad, you should be happy for me." And when I finally told her that I didn't like how he spoke for her, made decisions for her, she sighed like I was a burden and whispered the word that stung deeper than any insult. Jealous. Jealous. Of him. The man who lived off my groceries, borrowed my tools, took my parking spot, and somehow managed to twist Lily so deeply into his orbit, she stopped seeing him clearly. He played the supportive boyfriend role perfectly around her soft voice, gentle hands, constant validation, but behind her back, he walked with the arrogance of someone who thought he'd already won. And it got worse. One evening I went out to the garage and found my truck missing. Jason strolled in 2 hours later, waving my keys like they belonged to him, saying, "Relax, I just needed to pick something up from a buddy." No text, no call, no permission. When I confronted him, he smirked and said, "It's all in the family, right?" The same line he used the day I noticed a charge on my credit card for $279, some emergency he apparently had. He didn't even bother to tell me. When I asked Lily about it, she nervously twisted her hands and said, "Jason said it was urgent. You weren't going to mind." But I did mind. I minded a lot, because every day felt like losing a little more of my home, losing a little more of my daughter, losing a little more of the peace I'd worked decades to build. And the more I pushed back, the more he pushed forward, stepping deeper into my space, my routines, my property, as if he was waiting for me to slip, to give up, to hand him everything he wanted without a fight. A man doesn't claim a house all at once. He claims it piece by piece, one borrowed tool at a time, one dismissed concern at a time, one manipulated conversation at a time. And by the time I realized what Jason was trying to do, how far he intended to go, he was already calling parts of my home ours, as if he'd already rewritten the story of who it truly belonged to. But he didn't know that every move he made, I was watching. Every line he crossed, I was noting. Every small takeover attempt, I was storing deep inside. Because when someone tries to steal what you built with your hands and your heart, they don't know, at first, that they're only setting themselves up for the biggest mistake of their life. The turning point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when the house usually felt peaceful, warm, familiar. But peace had become rare ever since Jason started circling my home like a hawk eyeing its next meal. Lily had gone out to run errands. Jason was working on content in the living room, and I went to my office to look for an old photograph. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't snooping. I was simply flipping through drawers until something caught my eye. A folder I'd never seen before tucked beneath my tax documents, positioned too neatly to be an accident. At first, I thought maybe Lily had stored something there, but when I opened it, the breath froze in my throat. The first page was a lease agreement, typed cleanly, with my full name printed under the title Former Occupant. Former Occupant. My heart hammered as I scanned the lines my signature scribbled at the bottom. Shaky and off-center, a pathetic attempt to mimic my handwriting. It was dated 3 weeks earlier, witnessed by Jason Miller, a name he'd clearly added himself. The next document was worse, a partially filled property transfer form, the kind used when transferring ownership. My name again, forged with the same sloppy scrawl. Buyers listed, Lily Thompson and Jason Miller. Not married, not co-owners, joint tenants with survivorship, meaning if anything happened to me, the property would go directly to them. Directly to him. Behind that was a list of Jason's debts bank notices, collection agencies, late payment letters, tens of thousands of dollars he'd never mentioned to Lily, credit cards in default, payday loans, a nearly maxed out line of credit, all hidden, all ignored, all growing. And behind the debt, screenshots printed from his phone, messages to someone named Reed that made my stomach twist. She's almost there. Once she moves in, it's done. House is solid, worth at least $900K. He's old school, easy to push out. Secure the house first, then marriage. Once he's out, everything's smooth. Secure the house. Secure, like my home was a target, a prize to claim. Underneath that stack was the final blow. A prepaid legal document with my full name and birth date, an identity verification form he had filled out, ready to submit, missing only my signature. He wasn't just planning to take over the house. He was planning to become me long enough to steal it. I sat there in my chair, staring at these papers that felt like knives. My hands were steady, but inside I felt a kind of anger I hadn't felt in years. Not the kind that explodes. The kind that burns slow, deep, controlled. The kind a man feels when he realizes someone hasn't just disrespected him, they've tried to erase him. And through all this, one thought hurt worst of all. Lily had no idea. My daughter, who trusted him, defended him, believed in him, she didn't know the man she loved was planning to steal everything she grew up in. Everything her mother left behind, everything I had built with decades of sweat. She thought he was helping her build a future. She didn't know he was building a trap. I gathered every document carefully, photographing each page, flipping them over, checking for signatures, watermarks, any detail that mattered. I stayed calm. I breathed slow. I swallowed the storm clawing at my chest. When I stepped out of my office, Jason was still lounging on the couch, scrolling his phone, smirking at something meaningless. He didn't look at me, didn't sense a thing, because manipulators always think they're smarter than everyone else in the room. They don't realize when the tables have turned. I walked past him without a word, without a glance, without letting him see even a flicker of what I now knew. And as I put the folder into a locked drawer with the evidence on my phone, one truth became painfully clear. Jason wasn't trying to join this family. He was trying to replace me, remove me, claim everything I built from the foundation to the roof, as if he'd earned any of it. But he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated me, and he forgot one thing. A house built with real hands and real love cannot be stolen by a man who's never built anything in his life. I didn't say a word about what I'd found until the moment it mattered most, when Lily walked into the living room that evening, cheeks flushed from the cold, smiling like the world was normal. Jason was already pacing with that restless energy he got whenever he felt cornered, though he didn't know yet just how cornered he truly was. I stood near the kitchen doorway, the folder tucked under my arm, watching as Lily kissed him on the cheek and asked, "What happened?" Dad said something was wrong. Jason jumped in before I could speak, his voice dripping false innocence. "Your dad's just upset because I changed the locks. I told him we needed to update security. He's overreacting." Lily turned to me, confused. "Dad, why didn't you call me?" Jason smirked over her shoulder, like he'd already won, like he thought she'd take his side automatically. And maybe she would have if I hadn't opened that folder. I laid the papers on the coffee table one by one, slow and deliberate, like a dealer laying out cards in a game he knew he couldn't lose. "I didn't call you," I said, "because some things need to be said face to face." Lily frowned as she picked up the first page, the fake lease, then the forged signature, the property transfer, the debt notices, and finally the messages. Her fingers trembled. Her eyes kept darting from the papers to Jason, then back to the papers, like her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. "Jason, what is this?" she whispered. Jason stepped forward instantly, voice rising, hands waving, trying to grab the documents. "It's nothing." "He's twisting things, Lily. He's always hated me. He probably made these himself to push you away." But for the first time in months, Lily didn't rush to defend him. She held the papers to her chest, like they were shards of glass, cutting through every lie she'd believed. "These are screenshots from your phone," she said quietly. "That's your number. Your words." His face changed, then something sharp, angry, exposed. The mask slipped. The smile vanished. The charm evaporated. He wasn't the smooth-talking fiancé anymore. He was the desperate man trapped in his own lies. "You don't get it," he snapped, turning his rage toward me. "You're old. You're stuck. You don't deserve this place. You don't even use half the house. Lily and I need it. We can build something with it." I shook my head slowly. "You weren't building a future. You were planning a takeover." He slammed his fist against the wall, making Lily flinch. "You think you're the hero? You think you can stop us? You can't. You're alone. You need us more than you think." His voice cracked at the end, and that crack was all I needed. I opened my phone, tapped the screen, and played the recorded audio, his own voice, bragging to Reed about securing the house, pushing me out, taking control. Lily covered her mouth. Jason froze. You recorded me? He hissed. In my house? I corrected. In my living room. And in this state, only one person needs to know the recording is happening, and that was me. He lunged toward me, but I didn't even step back. I stood my ground, calm as stone, staring at him like he was nothing more than a loud, foolish child. Lily got between us before he could reach me, her eyes blazing not with fear, but with clarity she should have had months ago. You were going to steal my father's house, she said, her voice breaking. You lied to me, manipulated me, used me. Jason grabbed her wrist, desperate now, breathing hard. Lily, listen to me, we can fix this. He's turning you against me. Let go of her, I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the room. He didn't. Not until I placed the police card on the table, the officer I'd already spoken to, the case number printed neatly across the top. I gave you every chance to be honest, I said. But now, it's out of my hands. Jason backed away slowly, his bravado cracking, panic rising in his eyes as the reality finally sank in. He wasn't winning. He wasn't in control. His little plan, his texts, his fake documents, his debt-driven scheme, it was all exposed. Completely, irreversibly, publicly. Lily stepped away from him like she didn't even recognize the man she'd been planning to marry. And for the first time since he walked into our lives, Jason looked small, beaten, cornered. He whispered one last desperate line. You can't ruin my life like this. I looked him dead in the eye. You ruined your own life the moment you tried to steal mine. The room went silent, thick with the weight of truth. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he finally understood he had lost. Completely. The police came the next afternoon. I didn't hide anything, didn't dramatize anything. I simply handed them the documents. The recordings, the forged forms, the debt notices, the screenshots. Every piece of evidence Jason never imagined would come back to crush him. They spoke to Lily first, gently, because she looked like someone standing in the wreckage of a life she thought she understood. She answered every question honestly. When they finally turned to Jason, he folded fast. The bravado was gone, replaced by this trembling resentment, like he couldn't believe the world wasn't bending to his will anymore. He tried to blame me. Blame Lily, blame stress, blame debt, anything except himself. But the officers weren't interested in excuses. Fraud, attempted identity misuse, attempted property transfer without consent, forgery, harassment, trespassing. The list was long enough that even he went quiet when they read it aloud. They escorted him out of my house in handcuffs, and Lily watched from the doorway, tears slipping down her face in a way that wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was release. A restraining order was granted that evening. He wasn't allowed within 100 feet of me or my home. For the first time in months, the house felt still, safe, like it was breathing again. Lily stayed the night. She didn't speak much. She just sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the wall, replaying the months she'd lost, the warnings she ignored, the trust she gave to a man who only saw her as a key to a property he couldn't afford. When she finally looked up at me, her voice was small. Dad, I'm so sorry. I sat beside her, not saying anything at first. I just rested a hand on her back, the way I used to when she was a child, when she came home after scraping her knees, or losing a friend, or waking from a nightmare. You don't have to be sorry, I told her. You loved someone who didn't deserve you. That isn't a sin. She nodded, tears falling freely, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I had my daughter back, the real her, not the version twisted by someone else's influence. In the days that followed, she cut ties with him completely. She went to therapy. She moved temporarily into her friend's apartment, while she rebuilt her confidence. And every evening she called me, not because she needed something, but because she wanted to hear my voice, to reconnect, to breathe again. As for me, I spent a quiet week fixing little things around the house, tightening a hinge, sanding a doorframe, oiling the tools Jason left scattered. There was peace in the work, the kind that settles in your bones. I walked room to room, touching the walls I once hung drywall on, remembering the nights I spent building this place for my family. And it hit me, clear as sunlight through a window. A house isn't just wood and nails. It's memory. It's effort. It's love carved into every beam. And no one, not a desperate man, not a manipulator, not a thief, can ever truly take a home built with that kind of intention. In the end, Jason didn't just lose a house he tried to steal. He lost the future he pretended he deserved. He lost the woman he thought he controlled. He lost the comfort of lies he wrapped himself in. And me? I gained something far more valuable than revenge. I gained clarity. I gained my daughter back. I gained the quiet strength of knowing that standing your ground, even at the risk of breaking someone's illusion, is worth it. The night after everything was finally settled, I stood on the porch with a mug of coffee in my hands, the air cool against my skin, the house warm behind me. And I realized something. Sometimes life tests you not to show your weakness, but to remind you of your strength. And this house, this life, this peace, it was mine. Hard-earned, honestly built, fully protected. And no one was ever going to take it from me again.